Good morning, councillors. Good morning to the executive. Good morning to those joining us in the gallery this morning, and good morning to those joining us via the digital gallery this morning also. It's my privilege to declare the ordinary meeting of Wednesday, 24th of January 2024 open, and in doing so to pause once again and acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands on which we meet and upon which our wonderful scenic rim is formed, pay respects to their elders past, present and emerging, and thank them again for their generosity of spirit and their continued nurture of their culture. Note a full attendance of councillors today, therefore no apologies, and we come to the matter of prayers. And councillors, we don't have a pastor with us today, so with your forbearance, in the context of considering the matters before us today, I would just contemplate the verse from Proverbs 16 verse 16. How much better to get wisdom than gold, to get insight rather than silver. May indeed the contemplation of seeking wisdom as the overarching priority and the discernment of insight be the guiding thought to our deliberations today. We just pause for a moment in prayer. Father, we are thankful that you are indeed a great and mighty God with wide and powerful oversight, wisdom and insight. We pray that as we gather to make decisions on behalf of this place on this day, that you will guide our deliberations by your Spirit, that we will indeed seek wisdom to inform all that we do and listen carefully for your insights above the clamouring voices that could easily distract us, to do what is right in your sight. We pray this in Jesus' name. Amen. I'm advised that we move forward to public question time. We have no questions notified for today's meeting. We do have two notified conflicts of interest that we will deal with from Councillor Hay. Councillor will deal with those when we come to item 11.3 and also then with item 12.1 before we go into closed. There are any other conflicts I need to be aware of? No. Don't make sudden movements like that, Councillor Chalk. I'll think you're at an auction and you... So, there are no announcements for today's meeting and there are no deputations for today's meeting. So we move to the first item of business, which is the paying attention to the minutes from the previous meeting on the 20th of December 2023. And councillors, I have a recommendation there that the minutes of the ordinary meeting held on the 20th of December 2023 be adopted. I seek someone to move.
Mayor, just before we move,
yes.
Could I just alert to an incorrect date on the first page of the minutes on the title?
So if we move it, then we can move to corrections.
If you want to do it that way.
Let's do that way. Thank you. So seek a mover, Councillor Enright, and a seconder, Councillor West. Thank you. Now, Councillor, you want to just elaborate on that for the attention of any corrections that should be brought to attention?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. On the first page of the minutes from the ordinary meeting of Wednesday, the 20th of December, as the date of the 2nd of December. So just a zero missing. So that is all.
Thank you. Noting that editorial correction, any other matters, councillors?
They're perfect as usual, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other discussion? Councillor, you wish to speak to your motion?
No, thank you, Mayor.
Anyone wishing to seek leave to speak against? Not put the motion. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you, councillors. I'm not advised of any business arising from the previous minutes. Therefore, we move to item 11, which is the consideration of the business before the meeting today. And we start with item 11.1, for those following along, that's on page 4 of the published agenda. And I turn to Councillor Enright to introduce this item.
Thank you, Mayor. As Portfolio Councillor for Community Arts and Culture, I would like to introduce the report, item 11.1, procurement exemption under section 235, Local Government Regulations 2012, Our Community Proprietary Limited. I take the report as read and now move the motion that Council resolve to engage the following supplier under section 235 of the Local Government Regulations 2012. The supplier being Our Community Pty Ltd, the services, access to the Smarty Grants online grant management platform for the administration of Council's various grants and funding programs. The exemption is under item 235B and the expiry is 30 June 2025.
Thank you, Councillor. I seek a seconder to the motion. Councillor McConnell. Any further commentary, Councillor, or we move to any questions?
I'll save.
Thank you, Councillor. Any questions to the report, Councillors? Councillor Hay.
Thank you, Chair. Through you, for the clarity of those listening in the digital gallery, could it possibly be explained why it was considered that this supplier was the only supplier who was suitable to perform this contract?
Through you, CEO. Through General Manager.
Thank you, Councillor. In relation to the program that we've been running now since 2020, we've established quite a large database, nearly 2,000 current users on this system. Essentially, the system is pretty much one of the main ones used for grant applications by local governments. It is very easy to use and is well established not only within the council offices that administer it, but also with the community. On that basis, the difficulties in changing software in this case far outweighed the benefits of this software that we have. So that's the main reasons that we intend to retain this software.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions, councillors? If not, Councillor Enright, you wish to speak to your motion?
Thank you, Mayor. The Smarty Grants online grant management platform is an important part of our community, environmental and regional arts development fund grant process. We value the importance of providing funds to our community through the various grants, but it does come at an administrative cost, and that being the resources of our council officers. The Smarty Grants have provided a welcome tool to assist in this process, and it has been well received by the community groups. It does provide excellent administrative value for our council officers as well. And I would suggest that both council officers and the time of our community groups has been reduced by using this platform, and I'm satisfied that council continue to engage with the Smarty Grants platform through the platform owners, Our Community Proprietary Limited.
Thank you, Councillor. Anyone wishing to speak against? Seeking leave to speak additionally? If not, we put the motion. Those in favour? That's carried unanimously. Thank you, councillors. We move to item 11.2, which commences on page 8 of the agenda before us today, and I turn to Councillor McGuinness.
Thanks, Mayor. I'd like to introduce the next item, 11.2, which is Scenic Rim Climate Change Roadmap 2024 to 2034. and 3-year action plan from 2024 to 2026, and community engagement with survey results. As a portfolio chairman, I'm well across this. I take the report as read, and I'd now like to move the motion that 1, Council adopt the Scenic Rim Climate Change Roadmap 2024 to 2034. 2, Council note the Scenic Rim Climate Change 3-year action plan 2024 to 2026. 3, Council acknowledge the outcomes of the community engagement input into finalising the Scenic Rim Climate Change Roadmap 2024 to 2034 and 3-year action plan 2024 to 2026. And 4, Council delegate authority to the Chief Executive Officer to make minor grammatical, graphic design and formatting changes to the Scenic Rim Climate Change Roadmap 2024 to 2034 and 3-year action plan 2024 to 2026 if required, and prior to publishing on Council's website for public access, noting any such changes will be advised to councillors prior to publishing.
Thank you, Councillor. I seek a seconder. Councillor Enright, thank you. Further comments, Councillor McGuinness, or are we open for questions?
Yeah, I will make a couple of comments, Mayor. As people know, this is has been before the community before, and once again, in the last number of months, there's been consultation. Not a big response, I suppose, in numbers, but as always, some varying views on this subject. I believe one of the main things that council are looking for is and doing in this is saving on energy costs through increased efficiency and self-generation for council and the community. There are a number of things under all our themes that we, with the community, that we look at. I think it's a good thing right across the broad breadth of the community, from farming to wherever, to when we have disasters and so on. It's good that we're actually addressing this and keeping a close eye on this. So I believe it's in the interest of council and the community that we accept this report.
Thank you, Councillor. Any questions to the report, councillors? Councillor Hay?
Thank you, Chair. Through you, does Council have any indication of why there was such a poor survey participation rate? I think it's 36, which is quite surprising given the number of people who reside in the Scenic Rim, and this is an extremely relevant matter at the moment.
Through you, CEO.
General Manager.
It's fairly hard to understand why people don't participate. We don't have that information. But what I can say is that the plans were well advertised through our media and our websites and the like, and through the Let's Talk platform. To make any comments as to why people didn't put in submissions, I'm sorry, I'll be only speculating. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions, councillors? Any other discussion? Not, you wish to speak to your motion, councillor?
Yes, Mayor, I believe this is a good report, and I thank officers for the time that they've put in there, and there are not big changes to the previous report there, and it is, as I said earlier, it is in the interest of the community to have something like this, and we do have differing opinions in the community on this, and from both sides of the argument, that's for sure. And I take Councillor Hayes' point. It's interesting. Why so few would respond, but I don't think this is the only thing where we have limited numbers. That it surprises me and disappoints me that people don't have their say when they're given a say. We get accused at times of not consulting, and these sort of things is all about consulting, and we do it as much as we can. And the people you hear from are silent when it comes to some of these things at times. But it is a good report. I believe it's sustainable for the ongoing, not only in the next 3 years, but as the 10-year plan also. So I recommend it to the meeting.
Thank you. Councillor, anyone wishing to speak against? Anyone seeking leave to speak additionally? Councillor Enright.
Thank you, Mayor. I would like to speak to this report. This is something that has taken a while to bring together, and while there might have been only 36 that provided surveys, there was over 100, I think, that viewed the documents and we were able to provide information to the community, which is important. I think the outcome from the consultation was interesting, and there was some slight changes to the document with input from those from the community, but also the roadmap and the 3-year action plan provides a summary of actions that I believe are appropriate and realistic for council into the 3-year action plan, but also into the longer 10-year roadmap. So well done to our officers. Thank you for the work that you've done to bring this together, and we look forward to this being delivered out into the community.
Thank you, Councillor. Anyone else seeking leave to speak additionally? I will take the opportunity to speak additionally. Councillors who were present at the time will remember that this was passionately discussed at the tail end of the previous term, and pay tribute in seeing this before us today to former Councillor Nadia O'Carroll for her passionate advocacy and input to the formation of the first interim climate change statement of intent. It is certainly been a thought-provoking process to get to a consolidated statement of intent and then to get to this stage across this term. And the challenge, I commend the officers for the quality of what's been put into the plan. The challenge all the way through this has been to create a plan that is engaging for all parts of our community and not divisive, which was one of the goals that we believe is important. And this plan has brought that to bear. Yes, there will be people who still are concerned about parts of it, but it has brought together a focus that is within council's capacity and council's accountability, and that very much from a community point of view looks like also education and support to the community for them to play their part as well as we progress through this first action plan and follow on the roadmap. It is a really great day to have this tabled for the finalisation of what is a significant piece of work to inform so many other activities that we undertake in council and put them into the right context for a sustainable future. And I will be delighted to join other councillors, I believe, in supporting this. Thank you. Back to you, Councillor McGuinness. Wish to close?
No, it's all right, Mayor. I think you need to add.
Thank you. Then I put the motion. Those in favour? That's carried unanimously. Congratulations, councillors, and thank you again for the great work to get to this stage. We now turn to item 11.3 of today's agenda, which commences on page 18, and I'll turn to Councillor McConnell to introduce this item.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As a councillor for Division 2, I would like to introduce the report Development Application MCU 20/077 for the development permit for a material change of use, tourism activities, nature-based tourism, 10 tourist accommodation sites at 36 Young Street, Tamborine Mountain, Lot 96 on WD 1000. I wish to move a motion that is different to the recommendation from the officer. I move that one. Oh, wait, forgot about the conflict.
Yeah, sorry.
Sorry, I apologise. Yes, brought to my attention. Councillor, sorry, moving too fast for me today. Councillor Hay, you had a conflict you wish to advise the meeting of, sorry.
Thank you, Mayor. Unfortunately, I'm required to declare that I have a prescribed conflict of interest in this agenda item. The conflict arises as I made a submission to Council in respect of this development application back when it was advertised for public submissions, and I intend to leave the room, take no part in the discussion or the vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. My apologies for inadvertently missing that. And thank you for that advice. Before we proceed. Come back to you now, Councillor Connell.
Would you like me to carry on or restart?
Yes, continue on.
Okay.
I think you've only read the introduction of the item, so now you're moving to the progression of the motion.
I move that one, Council receive and note the report titled Development Application MCU 20/077 for the development permit for a material change of use, tourism activities, nature-based tourism, 10 tourist accommodation sites at 36 Young Street, Tambourine Mountain, Lot 96 on WD 1000. 2. Council not approve development application MCU 20/077 for reasons presented below. In the table, A, the proposed development departs from the policy direction of the strategic framework for the Scenic Rim Planning Scheme 2020, in particular, table 3.4.2, element, mountain community, strategic outcomes, SO2 and SO6. B, the proposed development departs from the policy direction of the strategic framework for the Scenic Rim Planning Scheme 2020, strategic framework, in particular, table 3.5.2, element, tourism and recreation, strategic outcomes, SO11. C, the proposed development departs from the policy direction of the strategic framework for the Scenic Rim Planning Scheme 2020, strategic framework, in particular, table 3.6.2, element, natural hazards, risk and resilience, strategic outcomes, SO1 and SO2. D, the proposed development does not achieve the purpose of the Rural Zone Code, Rural Escarpment Protection Precinct for the Scenic Rim Planning Scheme 2020, in particular, Rural Zone Code, section 6.2.17.2, overall outcomes 3A1, 3B2 and 4, 3C2 and 3D3. E, the proposed development conflicts with the performance outcomes of the Rural Zone Code, Rural Escarpment Protection Precinct for the Scenic Rim Planning Scheme 2020, in particular, A, Rural Zone Code, section 6.2.17.3.3, performance outcome, P01, and B, Rural Zone Code, section 6.2.17.3.4, performance outcome, P01, P03, and P04. F, the proposed development does not achieve the purpose of the Landslide Hazard and Steep Slope Overlay Code for the Scenic Rim Planning Scheme 2020, in particular, Landslide Hazard and Steep Slope Overlay Code, section 8.2.7.2, overall outcomes 2A to F and H to K. G, the proposed development conflicts with the performance outcomes of the Landslip Hazard and Steep Slope Overlay Code for the Scenic Green Planning Scheme 2020, in particular, Landslide Hazard and Steep Slope Overlay Code, Section 8.2.7.3.2, Performance Outcomes P01, P02 and P07.
Thank you. Councillor, I seek a seconder. Councillor Chalk, thank you. You wish to speak further to your report, Councillor?
I'm happy to go through. I've given everyone the breakdown of the reasons why I believe each of those sections don't make the code. I'm happy to work through those if you want, or if people would like to ask questions.
Councillor, just for clarity and for the benefit of the public, I'd propose administratively that those additional pages be included in the minutes. I'm happy if we want to deal with that via a separate procedural motion, otherwise to include them. Just a correction, by the way, I believe, Councillor, to item G, would you be comfortable to remove the word departs and just stay with the word the proposed development conflicts?
Oh, yes, sorry, typo in
Thank you.
my error.
Thank you. And administratively, to include those additional reference pages, which are only advisory, but to include them administratively in the minutes, I don't believe it needs a procedural motion. We just note that, please. That's, you want a motion for those?
Yes, Chair. I think in the past
Oh,
it's the standard that we
Can I
move
move a procedural motion to table?
Yeah, let's
my document?
deal with that right now then. Table those, just a motion to table for inclusion in the minutes. Maybe you just describe them as additional reference pages to the relevant strategic framework components. Does that wording work for you? Then you might want to move that.
Yes, happy.
Thank you. Councillor, you're happy to move that. Any further discussion to that, councillors? Questioning to it? Additional commentary to it? As procedural motion, we don't need a seconder, so we put the motion. Those in favour? Thank you. That's dealt with. Okay. Now, further councillors' questions to the report, either for Councillor McConnell in the first instance, or more particularly back for technical advice. Questions? Councillor West.
Thank you, Mayor. Through you, but to the officer, I just wondered if you could elaborate a little more on the landslide hazards and the steep slope overlay code for us, please.
Thanks, Councillor, for the question and through the chair. So the subject site is covered by both medium landslide hazard as well as portions of the site, not in its entirety, and then up to 25% steep slope and over. So in terms of the topography of the land and the it being mapped for potential for a risk, there was additional requirements in terms of reporting for to demonstrate that any structures to be placed on that site, heavy infrastructure and the like, wouldn't increase landslide susceptibility and the like. So as part of the requirements in demonstrating compliance with the code, the applicant generally provides additional reporting prepared by a suitably qualified person to demonstrate that they're achieving the purpose of the code, to minimise risk to both property and persons.
Thank you. Further questions? Councillor McInnes.
Yes, Mayor, through you and the CEO, if I can ask the officer if he might elaborate on all the points that Councillor McConnell's put forward here, and where you see those points, or do you have a differing opinion from him?
Thank you, councillor, and through the chair. So the items raised by the councillor were probably the same considerations us as officers were making in terms of on the balance whether this development could be supportable. So there's the presence of the landslide and steep slope is a risk factor which needs to be considered through expert reporting where we've undertaken peer review. In the instance with the other provisions there, it's namely around tourism type uses within that zone and whether they're within an acceptable limits of what could be, I guess, not undermine the character or unduly impact on adjoining neighbours. So in terms of the provisions, what have been read out, we're looking at the strategic framework, which are higher overarching statements under the planning scheme, and then through the hierarchy of the planning scheme itself, then it reflects down to the rural zone code as well, where there's certain provisions there in terms of what's anticipated for that zoning and what could be supported. So in terms of in this instance, a lot of the statements and references made by the councillor here is around the scale and intensity of the use as well for the zone. So, and that talks about both character implications as well as impact on neighbours.
Thank you for that response. Further questions, councillors? If not, Councillor McConnell will move forward to speak to your motion.
Discussion first.
If you want to have further discussion, I'm happy if you want to.
Sorry, yes, I
Yep,
would like to
fire
have
away.
some discussion. So you've got the reasons there on each of the points. Now, I appreciate what the officer has said, but if you have a look on reason 1, it needs to be consistent with a predominant built form and scale. It's a residential area, and this is not a residential MCU. This is tourism. So it's that encroachment of tourism into residential areas. Strategic outcome 6. It says it supports low intensity, very low intensity, which it's not. Also talks about small scale and low intensity. This is 10 cabins within a 60-metre range on the back of 12 residential properties. If you have a look at strategic outcome 6D, avoids impacts on the amenity and privacy of nearby buildings. Avoids. Doesn't say minimise, it says avoids. And what has happened is there's a 20-metre setback for tourism development, which has been encroached on. So that 20-metre setback is there for a reason, and it's been encroached on at the impact and amenity of nearby residents. So reason 2, again, the strategic outcome, small-scale tourism. It needs to protect the privacy and amenity of nearby sensitive receivers, which are the households or the residents. And it doesn't do that because it impacts by encroaching within the setback of 20 metres that is in place. The character of the area is maintained. The character of the area is residential. Again, it's small-scale tourism encroaching within the residential area on Tamborine Mountain. Reason 3 talks about natural hazards, risk and resilience. The development that potentially, and that's the key word there, potentially increases exposure of people and property to natural hazards. It is in a steep slope area, the Escarpment Protection Precinct. We're already aware through the Wilmot report of issues on Tamborine Mountain, of slippage. We also know during 1997 with the Threadbow disaster where 18 people were tragically killed because development was in an area that probably wasn't the best, as well as the increase in water during that time with the leaking pipe down there. Strategic outcome 2, development in natural hazard areas directly, indirectly and cumulatively avoids. So it avoids an increase in the extent of severity. So if you have a look at, if you've read the report, you would have seen that there are several water tanks going in there. That increases the slippage on that on the escarpment, with probably 100,000 tonne of water being placed in that area, in those tanks. Now, through the report, you'll see it's placed on a basalt rock with about 7 metres of soil on top of that. So it's not anchored, it's sitting on top of that basalt rock, so it doesn't avoid that increase. Reason 4, the Rural Zone Code and the purpose and overall outcomes facilitates very low intensity. Again, it's a 10 cabins within 60 metres. So they're not spaced out over the property, they're congregated in a 60 metre location. 3B land uses are small scale and do not detract from the amenity and privacy of adjoining businesses. Do not detract. It doesn't say minimise, it says do not detract from the amenity and privacy of adjoining premises. Outcome 3, very low intensity development. And again, it's 10 cabins within 60 metres of each other at the back of a residential area. On the built form is a small scale setback from property boundaries to maintain the low density character of the zone and maintain the amenity and privacy to the adjoining premises. They've encroached within that setback. So it doesn't meet that there, and it's there to maintain the amenity and privacy. Not to minimise, but to maintain what they already have. Reason 5, again, the rural zone codes. Building setbacks are there to maintain the low density character of the zone. Again, the buildings have encroached within the 20 metre setback that we have. And assist in the protection and amenity and privacy of adjoining premises. There's no protection. We've encroached within the setback, and it's tourism within a residential area. Part 6 in the built form is small scale. Again, 10 cabins within a 60 metre boundary, within a 60 metre area at the back of residential properties. Performance outcome 3, amenity, does not detract from the amenity and privacy of nearby land in a residential zone. 10 cabins encroaching within the 20 metre setback of 12 houses. Is small scale and low intensity. Again, 10 cabins within 60 metres of 12 houses. Reason 6, which is the major issue that I have with this development. So it talks about the overlays of landslide hazard and steep slope. And again, I go back to not only the Wilmot report, but also Thredbo, as well as over the last 10 years, how many landslides have we had around our region, whether it's the Binnaburra Road, the Lamington Park, National Park Road, the Tamborine Mountain Road on the goat track, down on the Tamborine Mountain Road, Oxenford Road. The area is prone to landslips due to an increase in water and then heat affecting the stability of the slope. So you can see in there outcomes 2A to F and H to K. Development does not materially increase. Does not are the key words. It does not. Is it? And it goes back to the initial one at the start. Potentially. Does it potentially increase? I think it does. D, the potential for erosion or landslide are avoided. We're putting 100,000 litres of water in water tanks on that slope. H, development avoids involving the establishment or intensification of vulnerable uses and this is vulnerable uses, we're putting 10 cabins, upwards of 24 people in a vulnerable area. Storm runoff and wastewater disposal is effectively managed so as not to increase the risk. Not to minimise the risk, but not to increase the risk. There is upwards, and I'm sure you've read the report where the council's officers have said it's a conservative number that the developer submitted in regards to wastewater. It's upwards of 20,000 litres a week that will be put into the subsoil. 20,000 litres a week. That's on top of, if you have a look at New Year's Eve, over 400 millimetres of rain in 24 hours on Tamborine Mountain. So as to not increase the risk. Does that increase the risk? I believe it does. Reason 7. Performance outcome 1, steep slope and landslide area. Development is not located in areas of intolerable landslide risk. There have already been small slippages in that area over the last 30 years. In that very area. So I think I've covered in there, I don't believe as a council we should be increasing the legacy issues that have already been imposed on Tamborine Mountain. And I believe this, although it may not happen tomorrow, just like Threadbow, it has the potential to happen over the next 10 to 20, 30 years. We just had in the previous item the climate change action plan, and if you believe everything that is written about climate change, there's a lot more water coming. So a lot more change in temperature, in rainfall, and I don't believe that that area on Young Street is that vital that the development must go there. There are other places on Tamborine Mountain that development can go where there's no risk of landslip, landslide or hazards. So has anyone got any questions on what I've covered?
Sorry, Councillor, I'll
Yep.
chair if you like.
Yep, go for
Thank
it.
you. Any other discussion, councillors? Any other feedback? If not, wish to speak to your motion, councillor?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Again, I go back to legacy issues. We have already one on top of the mountain. We should not be increasing issues that could potentially put lives at risk. There are other places on Tamborine Mountain that can house a development like this, where it doesn't impose on the amenity and character of the area. I believe that the residential areas need to be maintained and that the slow encroachment of intensified tourism at the back door of residential properties is not something that council should be permitting. I think the impacts on the amenity and privacy of the nearby buildings, I've said in there, it avoids. This does not avoid the amenity and privacy of the nearby buildings. And small scale tourism outside of the minor tourism zone protects the privacy and amenity of nearby sensitive receivers, and it does not do that. I think the biggest issue we have is the potential increase of exposure of people and property to natural hazards. It says in there quite clearly, potentially increases. And I think the increase of building on an escarpment, including the 20 plus thousand litres of water going into the subsoil, including the climate change with 400 or 500 millimetres of rain coming in 24 hours, potentially increases the risk to people and property, and those people will not know the hazards because they're only there as tourists. They turn up thinking that the development was put in a place that did not potentially increase a landslide. Avoids an increase in the extent of severity. It avoids. It doesn't avoid. Avoiding it would be putting this development in another location other than the escarpment protection area. Does not detract, again, in our purpose and overall outcomes, does not detract from the amenity and privacy of adjoining premises. Do not attract, not minimises, it do not detract. Again, the setbacks are there for a reason. The setbacks are there to protect the residents from the encroachment of tourism. And the 20-metre setback should be enforced. Talks, again, does not detract. So it talks about performance outcome and the amenity and the built form does not detract from the amenity and privacy of nearby land in a residential area. Does not detract. Not minimises, not approximately, says does not detract. And we've all done a site visit to this location and we all know that it detracts. Those houses will be seen, or those buildings will be seen from the residents behind, and those tourists will be walking along the back door. Now, tourists aren't like residents where they come in the morning and come back at night. They come and go during the day, so there's an increase in traffic. And again, the steep slope landslide hazard. Development does not materially increase. Does not. Doesn't say minimalise the increase. It says does not materially increase. Talks about avoiding. The potential for erosion or landslide are avoided. It's avoided by not putting it in the escarpment protection area. There's other places on the mountain that can easily handle this development, and I don't believe the location is acceptable for the risk of tourists that come from all over the world. And if there was an issue 10, 20 years, the image of Tamborine Mountain would be severely tarnished. Development avoids involving the establishment or intensification of vulnerable uses within or near areas subject to a risk of landslide. Is there a risk of landslide? Yes, because it's in the escarpment protection area. Storm water runoff and wastewater disposal is effectively managed so as not to increase the risk of the landslide. The council officers in their own report believe that the wastewater figures are very conservative. So the 20,000 plus litres that I said could be even more. And the last one, steep slope and landslide area. Development is not located in areas of intolerable landslide risk. Not. So I think I've covered enough here that I don't believe this development in its location, in another location on Tamborine Mountain would be suitable, but in a location on the escarpment where the risk of landslide or potentially risk of landslide, I believe is unacceptable to no...
Councillor, you're over your 5 minutes, please. Draw to a close.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I don't believe us as a council should be creating legacy issues and putting tourists in a potential risky area.
Councillor, please, you're over your 5 minutes.
And I'm just about to close,
Well,
Mr Mayor.
I've asked you to close. So
Yeah, no,
please
I'm
close.
closing.
Well, don't take another minute to close, please.
Thank you. So I don't believe that as councillors we should be accepting the report, and I implore you to join me in refusing this application.
Thank you. Councillor, just as a point of clarification to your last comment, your motion actually says to receive and note the report. So that's actually accepting it on the table, but you're actually talking about the response to the report. So your wording was a little inconsistent there. However, anyone else wishing to speak against the motion? Anyone wishing to speak additionally to the motion? Councillor Enright.
Thank you, Mayor. I will speak in support of the motion. The proposed development, in my view, does not meet the planning scheme requirements, particularly in the aspects that have been outlined as far as amenity and privacy of adjoining premises. It does not meet the very low intensity. I don't believe the built form design complements and protects the natural landscape setting, and it is not small scale, low rise and set back from property boundaries to maintain low density character of the zone and precinct. So I will support the alternate motion.
Thank you, councillor. Anyone else seeking leave to speak additionally? I will speak additionally. I do support the motion, but not necessarily for all of the reasons that are there, but certainly for the components C, F and G as identified in the motion do bring to mind certain strong question marks about the balance of managing the risks adequately in the location. And for that reason, I can't support this moving ahead at this time. Whilst I always think the delicate challenge we have is about balancing the rights of all ratepayers and landowners. On this occasion, I believe intrinsic to the site there are some challenges that I don't believe in the current proposal have adequate confidence of addressing, and I'll be supporting the motion. Anyone else wishing to speak? Otherwise, councillor, you wish to close?
Yes, please, Mr Mayor, thank you. As I've detailed in there, I believe the biggest issue we have is the landslide risk. Given the climate change and the increase in rainfall, weather, I don't believe it's acceptable for this council to accept the risk, given the fact that there is other land on Tamborine Mountain where this development could go. I believe it's an unacceptable risk, and I hope that you support my motion.
Thank you, councillor. We put the motion. Those in favour? That's carried unanimously. Thank you, councillors. If we could now retrieve. Thank you for your assistance. Councillors, we will be moving to the late ordinary items, which are in the, for those following along at home, just while we're retrieving the councillor, we will move into the late agenda items which were published separately, and we'll be moving to item 11.4, and we'll be commencing on page 3, and we will have welcome back, councillor. The resolution on the prior matter was in accordance with an alternate motion provided by councillor McConnell, which did not approve the development, for your information. Thank you. That's for the summary. I'm not going to read the rest of it. You can catch that in the minutes. Thank you. Now, councillor West to item 11.4, which is on page 3 of the late items agenda. Councillors.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to present item 11.4, which is entitled Presentation of Council Service Catalogue 2022 to 2023. I take the report as being read, but just before I move the motion, I just want to clarify that Council committed to developing this service catalogue as part of the operational plan for 2022-2023. I'd like to move that, number 1, Council note the service catalogue 2022-2023 to 2023, sorry, and number 2, that Council endorse the publication of the service catalogue 2022 to 2023.
Thank you, councillor. I seek a seconder. Councillor McInnes, thank you. Any further discussion? Councillor West to introduce it, otherwise we move to questions.
Oh, no, I'll talk afterwards. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions to the report, councillors? Not discussion. Councillor McConnell?
Yeah, I do appreciate the effort that the council officers have gone to. It wasn't exactly what we were hoping to get to be able to assist us within our deliberations for budgets, but I think it goes a long way for the staff, the residents to see the amount of services that we have. It's interesting, and if I can ask a question about the FTEs and whether that totals the total number of staff, or was that a combined number? Because some areas would obviously do both. So it's not, you know, the roads and traffic 140 something FTEs. They obviously do work in other areas as well. Would that be correct?
Yes, councillor. The FTE data was taken from the 2022-2023 financial budget for the as part of the salary and wages component of our operating budget.
Thank you.
Thank you. Further questions? Councillor Chalk?
Just a question. Would you consider this body of work has had some positive benefits to the organisation?
I absolutely do. I think this is this project has actually changed the way that our people that are responsible for labour and materials and services change their way of thinking in terms of activities, outputs, and that's not necessarily the way all of our areas were thinking before. So I think it's had a positive outcome for our people in terms of the way they think in how they deliver their services, which will have future improvements in terms of how we plan for budget and associated activities.
Thank you. Further questions? Councillor Chalk?
Yeah, thank you for that response. I certainly can agree with that. Just to elaborate more on what Councillor McConnell was saying before, that it hasn't quite got to where the councillors originally intended to go. Is there any plans into the future to go further with this project currently?
I believe the 2024-25 budget will determine, operating budget will determine whether there is a phase 2 to, I suppose, delve further down into the cost to serve, because that would be a huge body of work for this organisation to expand on the existing information. So it would be part of the executive and incoming council's decision as to whether that is further progressed.
Thank you. Further questions, councillors? Councillor McConnell?
Just one to the CEO, if I could, through the chair. How do you believe this service catalogue, or the work that's been done, will change the way council officers operate within each department?
Through Mr. Mayor, as was indicated by the officer, it creates an awareness of which services are being delivered by which areas. There is often confusion about who has responsibility, especially in areas like compliance. So this document will basically set out a framework that, as was mentioned, needs high levels of connectivity going back into the general ledger. Once that occurs, we should be able to do better business planning of each of the services that are delivered. Also ask those questions about whether council is the right organisation to be delivering those services. Can they be delivered by the private sector or someone else for a cheaper rate and a bigger benefit for ratepayers from there as well?
Thank you for that response.
Further questions, councillors? If not, further discussion, Councillor West?
Thank you, Mayor. Look, as has been mentioned, this is the first document that we have of this type, and I'd like to thank the officers for the extensive work that's gone into this project. It became bigger than was expected, I believe, along the way. Certainly very informative for officers within the organisation, but also for the community to see the extent of services that council do provide. There's quite a lot of information about each section, and for interested community members, I do encourage them to have a look at this. But also the main aspect of it, that it'll be able to inform the upcoming operational plan and the upcoming budget for the next financial year. So thank you.
Thank you, councillor. Any further discussion, councillors? If not, you wish to speak? Sorry?
Mr Mayor, can I flag an amendment to this motion, please? Or
Councillor?
offer an amendment, sorry.
Yep. So what's the amendment you wish to move, councillor?
I'd like to move a part 3 to this motion, that council investigate before the budget process starts early next term, any costs associated with a phase 2 to continue this project. The reason behind that is because it was council. I didn't I?
So can we just clarify your wording of
Yes,
your
sorry.
amendment, please, councillor?
And then I lost you.
Just let's get the wording of your amendment first, councillor, and then we'll discuss it.
It would just be costs associated with a phase 2 of this project to continue this work. Might take some assistance from maybe the CEO or.
Through Mr Mayor, I understand where you're coming from, councillor. This is difficult given the timeframes associated with an incoming council, and again, decisions aren't meant to bind a future council, so to speak. I think if it's as simple as something in regards to refer stage 2 to the draft budget, that might be a better way of doing it. It's just that technically, as the general manager would say, the budget process has already commenced. We're internally already going through new initiatives and existing initiatives as well. So words that sort of highlight that it would be good to see further it would be beneficial to see further resources, financial resources allocated to this activity. I'm being cautious because it's a future council, and you don't want to influence the budget process with that.
Perhaps, councillor, where would you want to go? Can I just perhaps ask a question that might help, a different question? I think if I'm hearing the councillor right, the concern is to ensure that this is alerted into the budget. Is it already identified as one of the initiatives under evaluation?
Sorry, through you, Mr Mayor, we would need to go. There is not an amount at this point in time included in a future budget. However, we are going through the new initiative process right now. So if council was of a mind, they can simply say, consider. Would we be happy if council recommends it be considered as a new initiative?
Yeah,
Phase 2 is a new initiative.
that's where I was heading.
Okay.
Yeah.
That captures what my thinking around this. As I sort of said, it was driven by council laws, and I'd like to see it. I don't want to commit the next council to anything, but I'd also like to see maybe considered by the next council. I think it's really important.
Well, we haven't. But I think the point was until I think the resolution. I'm just trying to get the clarity of what the resolution is, that it be included as an initiative for consideration for the upcoming budget. Is that? Yeah.
So council include phase 2.
Yeah.
Phase 2 of the project.
Yep. As an initiative.
Of this.
For consideration in the upcoming, or in the drafting of, I think this if it's okay with you, councillor, in the drafting of the 24-25 budget. That what you're trying to achieve?
Yes, yep.
Right. Is
Sorry,
that okay with you?
Can we just change that a little bit? Council include council phase 2 of the. Yeah. And it will be as a new initiative.
So So sorry, I heard two sets of wording there. Right, everyone's trying to help Councillor Chalk. We just got to work out which of those words he's okay with. So the recommendation first was, the start was council considers for inclusion. Yeah, that's fine. Inclusion. You okay with that? Phase 2 of the service catalogue project as a new initiative was your other.
Yes, I think so.
Okay, so that's an amendment moved by Councillor Chalk. Seek a seconder, Councillor McConnell.
Do we need to clarify what phase 2 means?
So I believe, I think, so can I just clarify, I believe there's been some clarity around what that might scope, but with any initiative, the scoping of what that will be is part of what the initiative is that's put forward from a budget point of view. And yeah, that could be something that requires funding for multiple years because of the depth of the work. So I think the scope of what the initiative is for is properly dealt with in the initiative process, I think. So, but thank you for the clarification. So, Councillor, so any other discussion? It's moved and seconded now. Any other discussion you want to have to it, Councillor?
No. Apologies for the little bit unorganised, but I think it's important just to put some words there. Like I said, it was initiated by councillors this term as an important project, and I'm pleased with the outcome of this, but it didn't quite get to where we hoped it would. So if it's considered early next term by a new council, I think it's of value to them to make this consideration and for the work to be done behind the scenes. So I commend it.
Sorry, just I'm getting some administrative clarity here about just removing the duplication of consider and consider. Yes, I believe it's okay. Councillor, you mover and seconder, you comfortable just to remove that duplication for simplicity? So just for the benefit of those trying to follow this along, the wording of the amendment is now that council consider for inclusion phase 2 of the service catalogue project as a new initiative in the drafting of the 2024-2025 budget. Councillors, you're speaking to your motion. Anyone wishing to speak against? Speak to the amendment. Sorry, to the motion, to the amendment. I apologise. Yes. Anyone wishing to speak against? Anyone wishing to speak additionally? Put it to the vote. Those in favour? That's carried. So that now forms part. If you're comfortable, councillor, as part of the original motion, you're still comfortable to hold that with.
I am comfortable with that.
Thank you. Righto. Now we were at a point of having gone through some discussion, gone through some questions, and unless there are other proposed amendments, I'd now ask the councillor to speak to her motion. Councillor West.
Sorry, that I need to say, but I think that was a good addition to the motion, because we certainly would like the service catalogue to be extensively reviewed. This is really only the initial phase of it, so happy to support that. And thank you to the staff for the work that was put in, because it was a huge effort. Thank you very much.
Thank you, councillor. Just one comment from myself in terms of the publication of the document. The version that's in the council report today is the internal version for progressing through these meetings. Our communications and marketing team are working on a community-facing version, which will be provided.
So that actually suggests, Councillor Wast, we've started speaking to the motion, we should actually include a further amendment. Yeah. That we would normally carry a part of the motion that would identify that it's delegated to the CEO to progress the preparation of the public-facing document, and you've got that copied somewhere from before. If we can cut and connect. I think that would have been from 11.2. Yes. Okay, and I'll propose that amendment from the chair just to connect with that information comment. Thank you to the officer for alerting us to that piece of information. So we just get the wording up. Please bear with us.
Just to throw a spanner in the works here, Mr Mayor. It was only a, lost it, where are we? 11.4. It was only a presentation, so it wasn't endorsed the document. It was only presenting it to council. Does that change anything?
Well, it's publication of it. Part 2 of the motion was to publish it. That's why we just include that, just to complete that process, that it will be published. But seek a seconder, Councillor Chalk. Thank you. I don't need to speak any further to it. Anyone wish to speak against? If not, put the motion. Those in the amendment. Those in favour. That's added. So, Councillor, did you accept that into your motion? I know you'd already spoken, but would you wish to speak further now?
Thank you. I just, yes, accept that into the motion, and I really just encourage, once it goes up on the website, for all our residents to take a look, because it really is an extremely informative document, and even if it's just a quick skim through, I think people will be quite surprised at the extent of services that council are involved with.
Thank you, Councillor. Anyone wishing to speak against? Seeking leave to speak additionally, Councillor McConnell.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I endorse what Councillor West has said. It's a fantastic document that brings out, and I think it quite surprised even some of the councillors, the amount of services that council do provide. And once we get into phase 2 and people can see the cost of everything, I think it'll be quite eye-opening for the public to be able to see that side of things. So I fully endorse the motion and the amendments.
Thank you, Councillor. Anyone else seeking leave to speak additionally? Councillor Enright.
Thank you, Mayor. I also support this motion. The service catalogue provides the first phase in articulating services and service levels provided by the council to our community. And as we've discussed, further phases will provide additional insight into the delivery of these services. Significantly, this document outlines 34 core services that our council staff provide to our community. That's a very impressive list, and I would like to commend all council officers and staff across the organisation who do deliver these services for our community.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Chalk, wish to speak?
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor. I'll certainly endorse all the comments already spoken about by the councillors. I too think this was a great body of work to undertake. We heard from the council officer how valuable it was to the organisation, and I believe future phases of this will be extremely valuable to councillors in their decision making, which is how this project came about. And I'm glad to see that it's progressed really well, and looking forward to the further phases really informing us moving forward into the future. And it'll really help inform the community of the challenges and the opportunities that we have. So certainly endorse the motion.
Thank you, Councillor. Anyone else seeking leave to speak additionally? If no other speakers, I would speak in support of the motion. Yes, it is a great piece of transparency, and certainly gives the lie to that old mantra that councils just do roads, rates and rubbish, and the complexity and the 34 core services that the councillor referred to are really enlightening. It's also very timely that we're discussing this today as I reflect on the recently published report by the Local Government Association of Queensland, which highlights the shifting of more than $360 million of cost over a period of time from a range of governments of all persuasions, of shifting those costs to councils to continue to deliver those expectations in community. And I believe that's a concern that will continue to be the case and puts additional burdens. At present, as we all know, councils only collect 3% of the revenues provided through various forms of taxation. We only have a blunt object called rates to collect, but we only collect 3% of the revenue, but we are now responsible for a much larger level of the service delivery and the asset maintenance than that funding aligns with. And that continues to be a challenge that every council faces, but this council particularly, because of the complexity and the limitations on our revenues and on our rate structures to be able to continue to deliver the services that our community enjoys. That will be a challenge for future councils to contemplate. But I commend the report and thank the officers for bringing this to life. It's been talked about for a long time to crystallise into one place. Thank you. Councillor, you wish to close?
No, thank you.
We put the motion. Those in favour? That's carried unanimously. Thank you, councillors. We move to item 11.5, which is starts on page 51 of the late items agenda, and I'd like to introduce this report 11.5, which deals with the matter of financial hardship rates assistance. And councillors, the context of this, everyone's had the report, but clearly the so-called Christmas night South East Queensland severe storm events and some subsequent rain events have caused significant impacts for parts of our community. And whilst we, in our normal course of things, have gone ahead with the progression of the delivery of rates notices across the region in our normal time frame, we did have to wait until today to consider the matter before us today about recognising those challenges for some people. And therefore, I move that Council that Council creates a class of ratepayers under section 1221B of the Local Government Regulation 2012 for the purpose of enabling a concession to defer the payment of rates for residents and local businesses that were directly impacted as a result of the following natural disaster event: Christmas night South East Queensland severe storm, 25th of December 2023. The conditions of the concession are: A, the ratepayer must apply in writing for the concession. B, the ratepayer must satisfy the authorised person assessing the application that physical damage caused by the applicable event has impacted the livability of their residences or seen the commercial operations directly affected due to physical assets being severely damaged and or lost. Or 3, impacted the capability of the land to garner revenue-making opportunities generally associated with the prescribed description that the land is rated for. C, the ratepayer must provide the authorised person with particular information or documentation as requested as evidence to support the claim. And D, the class of ratepayers and the concession is a temporary arrangement available only up to 28th of June 2024. Councillors, I so move. I seek a seconder. Sorry, part 2. I'm just removing a word there. 2, that council delegate authority to the chief executive officer to undertake the actions required to give effect to the rates and charges concessions.
Was that
The or,
out
I
of
didn't
piece?
read the or,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
the or is only in the recommendation, it's not in. Thank you. Sorry, I missed that one as well, Councillor, I apologise. So, seconded by Councillor McConnell. Okay, councillors, obviously we all understand this has had a significant impact in a range of ways. I believe the report's been available to all, so are there any questions to the report? Councillor Hay?
Thank you, Chair. Through you, just refer to page 51, recommendation 1B3 specifically mentions revenue-making opportunities generally associated with the prescribed description that the land is rated for. I feel that 1B2 also needs to have similar wording encompassed in that provision as well, because we've seen a vast increase in the number of home-based businesses, particularly Airbnbs, that are operating from residential premises that are operating as a commercial operation. So I think it's important to capture the prescribed description of the land that the description that the land is rated for in 1B2 as well.
So you're proposing an amendment, councillor?
Yes, Chair.
Okay. So let's just...
Sorry, just before we go through that, maybe some information from General Manager.
Yeah, I was just going to try and capture the wording and then get some advice as to, before we move it, whether that's got... But if you want to go ahead with the advice.
Thank you, Chair. Through you, Mr Mayor, I guess part of the intent with that will be based on the assessment that the individual ratepayer impacted will specify what their concerns are and what their ongoings are, and then how that's been impacted. I guess trying to meld too much in and putting it in, it may constrict that ability for a person to put it in an application. The application is a particular form. They put all their particulars in there, and then it's up to the assessor to assess that accordingly, whether they've been impacted, and that's assessed on the merits of the application.
Councillor, do you still want to proceed with your amendment in light of those comments?
No, I'm quite happy to withdraw that. I'm just concerned that we don't seem to be capturing in 1B2 the fact that there are so many commercial operations occurring on residential property. And when we give any consideration to a rates concession where the property is rated as a residential property, then any commercial operations that are occurring on that property, I don't see how we can capture that.
Thanks for the comments, councillor. I understand the matter you've raised. Any further questions to the motion before us, or the report? Councillor McInnes?
Yes, Mayor, through you to probably the GM, through the CEO. We don't mention any areas while the big majority of affected properties are in the Tamborine and Tamborine Mountain areas. There are some other areas, so I take it it's any part of Scenic Rim that was affected by the storm, GM?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, it does cover the whole Scenic Rim, councillor. Thank you for that.
Any other questions, councillors? Any other discussion? I just point out in the discussion, we have done this before. We have had variations of this in the past. We've done it from the bushfires. We've done it from some of the other flood events in the past. And it's a balance between, in effect, this is a balance between giving concern, providing attention for our residents about their short-term cash flows, or their 6-month cash flows whilst they're in that recovery from these issues. And from our point of view, it really is a timing of the collection of revenue as opposed to a direct long-term impact. Any other discussion, Councillor West?
Mayor, really just to elaborate on what you've said, that yes, we have done this before, following floods and fires, and even during the pandemic. I think it provides a level of comfort to our affected residents, and in the end, we generally find that there's not a great deal who take up the offer, but it is great that it's there for them, so thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Yes, I'd agree. It at least gives them that flexibility. Any other discussion, councillors? If not, I'll just speak briefly to the motion to say that, you know, I commend this motion. It provides us the opportunity to recognise that the impacts are very different from these events, and for some people this has been, for many people, this is the most significant traumatic event that they will experience, and we just encourage people to consider their own circumstance should this pass, but I commend the motion. Anyone wishing to speak against? Speak additionally? Councillor McConnell?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I agree with what you're saying. The devastation that impacted mainly the eastern side of the Scenic Rim has been traumatic for those in the affected areas, and I've fielded quite a few calls, and when I've spoken to people, the hardship that they're facing now, this motion will go a long way to easing some of the burden that they have in regards to funding food on the table and petrol in the car. So I fully endorse this motion.
Thank you. Councillor, anyone else seeking leave to speak additionally? If not, I will just briefly close and point out that for other people who may not have been directly in this circumstance, who are suffering hardship, we always have financial hardship provisions available more generally, and urge people who are feeling that pressure should always consider having that conversation early rather than letting themselves get into difficulty. Our staff are very constructive and professional in helping people through those circumstances. Councillors, I put the motion. Those in favour? That's again carried unanimously. Thank you, councillors. It is 10:27. I'm going to adjourn the meeting there before we commence the next items, and we will return at 10:50 to continue the consideration of the matters before us today, but I adjourn the meeting at this time. Thank you. welcome back councillors, welcome back officers, welcome back to those in the gallery and in the digital gallery. We now turn our attention to item 11.6, commencing on page 56 of the late items agenda. And this is the presentation of the monthly financial report for December 2023. Councillor, we've all had access to the report, and I take the report as having been read, and I move that Council receive the unaudited financial statements for the period ended 31st December 2023 for the financial year 2023-2024. Seek a seconder. Councillor Enright, thank you. Councillors, I will invite the GM, Council Sustainability, to provide some commentary to the report and then invite additional questions and commentary from the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I guess from a general point of view, halfway through the financial year, it is tracking relatively on par with what's expected. It's hard to predict the impact of the event just gone by, but we're in the midst of undertaking the process required for the December budget review, and certainly there's been some emphasis on trying to forecast the operational aspects of the budget, and with the overlay of some of the recovery work that's just been required to be undertaken. There was a couple of actions indicated at the last meeting about incorporating indicative commitments columns in there. Unfortunately, at the time this was produced, the reporting hasn't actually been affected to that regard, but the staff have assured me that that will be available as of the end of January report. And I will go to page. One of the other action of that was the productions of some graphs that separated the capital works. And I think if you page 66 of the late items agenda, there's a couple of graphs in there that indicate the breakup of the council capital and grant funded capital for a visual highlight rather than trying to add up the figures individually. Page 66 down the bottom, Sharon, if you scroll those two graphs there. But other than that, Mr. Mayor, yeah, everything as per normal is tracking. There's a little bit of a deviation from some standard stuff, but a thorough review of the position and forecast throughout until 30th of June 2024 is currently being undertaken as part of the December budget review, and we'll see whether there's any adjustments that's necessary to reflect in these. But happy to take any questions.
Thank you for that's one of those good steps forward to highlight the split of expenditure, and we look forward to the other more detailed columns as well. Councillors, any questions to the report? Councillor Enright? No? We'll get to discussion in a moment. I wanted to go to questions first. Now I'll come to any discussion. Councillor Enright?
Thank you, Mayor. Just a comment about the development application, fees and charges, and the plumbing fees still remaining strong. Great to see the cash levels strong, but also interesting that the expenditure by location for the Scenic Rim at 15.6 million is also continuing to be strong.
Thank you. Any other discussion items, councillors? If not, move forward to speaking to the motion. At this stage, I'll reserve to speak and open the floor if anyone wishes to speak against. Seek leave to speak additionally. Councillor McCollum.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I agree with Councillor Enright's comments just then. It shows that we're actually in a good spot at the moment, and we're tracking to increase the spending, the spending back into the Scenic Rim, which is something that I know the councillors have all been requesting or been working on to increase the money that's raised here, spent back here. So I endorse the report.
Thank you. Anyone else seeking leave to speak additionally? If not, I'll just close and say, you know, what this report does on a regular basis is highlights us to the vagaries of the timing of what we try to deliver, and certainly the additional graphs there on page 66 highlight the conflict for us between what we plan for when we create a budget and what we end up having to try to execute and deliver because of the impact of so many other things, particularly like recovery programs and events that we've recently had. And the shifting of timing and phasing is a constant challenge to both deliver effectiveness and efficiency in projects. I do commend the officers that there is a continued focus on developing more relationships locally. There will always be a massive amount of spend that cannot come back in the region because we don't have providers in those sectors, but everything that can be, and I commend the continued development of local suppliers into this process, and I commend the report. Put the motion, those in favour? That's carried unanimously. Councillor McConnell, I turn to you on page 71 for those following along of the late items report, item 11.7, which is the report from the Audit and Risk Committee meeting of the 29th of November.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would like to introduce the report 11.7, Audit and Risk Committee meeting held on 29 November 2023. I take the report as read. I now move the motion that Council note the report to Council on the Audit and Risk Committee meeting held on 29 November 2023.
Thank you. Seek a seconder. Councillor Chalk, thank you. You wish to add any comment, Councillor, or open for questions?
No, the only comment I'd like to make is that it's a very detailed report, and it shows the level of interrogation by the Audit and Risk Committee on providing internal governance on the operations of Council. So I think the work done by our internal audit officer has been fantastic. And yeah, open for questions.
Any questions to the report, councillors? Any discussion to the report? Probably an important point just to add in that in for discussion is if people take the time to go through the report, the external parties involved is a really important part of this process, and it ensures that council, and certainly with the likes of the external auditors and the Queensland Audit Office, really ensures that council is always giving consideration to what are current and pressing issues such as cyber security and so forth, as well as having that independent casting of an eye over the processes of council to alert to areas for attention. I think the range of issues that are coming forward and being thought through is encouraging of an increasing, not just the sad reality of a very tough overall operating landscape, but particularly with things like AI and cybersecurity, but certainly then the operating environment and the expectations internally continue to benefit from that intense scrutiny. Any other discussion? If not, Councillor, come back to you to speak to your motion.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. As I said, the report's fairly detailed, and it's part of our open and transparency within council. This internal audit, as we've stated previously, contains two very experienced external audit members, and I think the the level of expertise they bring to the table has been invaluable. I think the commitment and dedication that the council officer Scott has brought to the governance of the council is commendable. So I thank you for the report and fully endorse it.
Thank you, councillor. Anyone wishing to speak against? Seeking leave to speak additionally? No. Thank you. Then, if not, we put the motion. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you, councillors, and thank you indeed for those services and that support. Councillors, that brings to a close the open items before us today. Before we table motions to move into our closed session, we do have a conflict of interest to table in relation to item 12.1, and I'd invite Councillor Hay, if you would address that matter whilst we're still in open.
Thank you, Chair. I declare that I have a prescribed conflict of interest in this agenda item, which has arisen as a result of me being a co-respondent by election in that particular court case. If anyone feels that there's anything else that I should declare, could they say so now rather than saving it up for another OIA complaint, please?
Thank you, councillor. We all understand the process for how to deal with matters here in the chamber, but thanks for the reiteration of those expectations. Noting that you just stay now for the vote to move into closed, and then we'll ask you to depart. So, councillors, with regard to moving into closed session, I move that one, for agenda item 12.1, final update, recovery of costs of appeal MCU 20-050 SDA Property Nominees Proprietary Limited versus Scenic Regional Council and Oars Planning and Environment Court Appeal. Council closes the meeting to the public pursuant to section 254J3E of the Local Government Regulation 2012, as discussions will be held about the appeal and recovery of cost which relates to legal proceedings involving council. And two, for agenda item 12.2, 10-year capital works program, council closes the meeting to the public pursuant to section 254J3C of the Local Government Regulation 2012, as discussions will involve matters relating to council's budget. Seek a seconder. Thank you, Councillor Enright. No, I don't have any need to discuss. Anyone need to discuss? Anyone wish to speak? If not, put the motion. Those in favour? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. And that's at 11:03. For those in the gallery, before we close, as ever, we will return on the quarter hour, whichever is the quarter hour available. It's 11:03 by my timepiece at the moment. And so that would mean we'd return at either 11:15, 11:30, etc. But for now, we bid you good day. thank you to the gallery for your patience, and we now seek a motion to return into open session. Councillor McConnell, seconded Councillor Hay. Thank you. And now that we've returned into open session, Councillor Hay, I will ask you just to step away for... Councillor Hay, I'll just ask you to step away for a moment while we do... Just vote. Sorry, yes, those in favour, sorry. Back into open session. Councillor Hay, will you just step aside for a moment while we deal with 12.1? And Councillor Chalk, if you'd like to introduce the motion for this.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I will just move straight to the motion. Motion today is that Council note the finalisation of cost recovery for appeal MCU 20/050 SDA property nominees Pty Ltd versus Scenic Rim Regional Council and Oars Planning and Environment Court Appeal number BD 2001 of 2021.
Seek a seconder. Councillor McConnell. Any further discussion? Questions? Wish to speak to the motion?
No, thank you, Mayor.
Anyone seeking leave to speak additionally? Put the motion. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. If you retrieve the councillor. Thank you, Councillor. We've dealt with item 12.1 in the affirmative, and councillors, we now turn our attention to the completion of item 12.2, and Councillor Hay, would you introduce, please?
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to introduce the motion that Council endorse the draft 2024-2025 to 2033 to 2034 10-year infrastructure capital works program for roads, bridges, footpaths, drainage and stormwater, vibrant and active towns and villages, facilities, parks, gardens and cemeteries, waste, fleet and other projects for planning purposes, grant applications and future budget considerations.
Seek a seconder. Councillor Enright, thank you. Any discussion to the matter? Councillor, any questions? Wish to speak to the motion, Councillor?
No, thank you, Chair. I think it's self-explanatory. I take the report as read.
Anyone seeking to speak against? Seeking leave to speak additionally? Put the motion. Those in favour? That's carried unanimously. Thank you, councillors. That brings us to the completion of the agenda items for today's meeting. Thank you to the officers for your support. And councillors, I declare the meeting closed at 11:18 and bid you good day to the gallery. Thank you.